Welcome back to my channel. If you are new here, I am a content creator, a mommy, a wife, an editor, a writer, an author, and occasionally I like to talk about shows like Married at First Sight, which is in the 16th season. So for this episode on my channel, we will be discussing episode 7 called You're Making Me Crazy from season 16 of Married at First Sight. But before I go over the review and recap of the show, I wanted to share this with you guys. So this person on Instagram, MAFS fan, for those of you who don't know, MAFS is Married at First Sight. They posted this chart of the past 15 seasons, how many couples were paired in that season compared to how many couples have stayed together, and the percentage of the success rate of the show. It is not looking very good. Now, for those of you who are just tuning to my channel by happenstance, because you're like, oh, Black woman, I'm going to click on her, and you've never seen the show, the premise of the show is that these two people who really want to get married get matched up by two experts now, and then they meet their intended spouse at the altar on their wedding day. They know nothing except for their ring size. And then we follow them through 8 weeks of them getting married, going on a honeymoon, moving in together, introducing themselves to each other's family and friends, having a housewarming party, celebrating their 1 month anniversary. And at the end, they have to decide if they want to stay married or want to get a divorce. So that's the premise of the show. In this season of 16, we currently have 5 couples, and they actually switched to 5 couples in season 10. It started with just 3 couples, and I do remember that. So basically, since the first seasons 1 through 15, looking at this chart, 59 couples have been paired on this show. Out of those 59 couples, 12 couples are together. That gives the show a success rate of 20%. Now, I will say that there are obviously lots of different reasons why a couple chooses not to stay together. I think that some of the couples were mismatched. I think that some of the people chosen for the show should not have been chosen for the show. And then there are other couples where I feel like if they had really put the work in and really listened to what the experts said, then they actually would have been a little more successful than they were. So there's a few different reasons. I know that a lot of people are calling for the experts to be replaced. I don't know if that's necessarily the solution. I also don't know, because we see the episode where they basically choose these couples, where they interview the different singles, they narrow it down to like 20 people, and then they narrow that 20 people down to 10, and then they figure out the 5 couples. We see them do that, but we don't really know how much influence production has on who gets chosen for the show, because obviously at the end of the day, we want to see people fall in love and live happily ever after, and I'm sure they kind of want that too, but they also want to make good television, because at the end of the day, they are a television show. They have to be entertaining, they have to get the numbers. People like drama, so sometimes you have to incorporate people and situations that's going to make it more dramatic. And I get that, I understand it. So that's why I'm not necessarily on board with replacing the experts totally, because we don't know if maybe the production team or whoever is putting certain couples together just to kind of spruce up some drama. Because I really believe a lot of these couples on paper should have made it, but the people just didn't put the work in. So I'm just going to say that. I wanted to get that out of the way before we did the review and recap, because I still love the show. I think the success rate is definitely terrible. It's not boding well for the success of the show, but people are still signing up for it. Even seeing that so many of these couples are getting divorced, because a lot of couples, which is interesting, who have gotten divorced have gone on to remarry and have babies and live a perfectly wonderful life. So you could say technically in that sense, the show is a success in that it is preparing people for a real life marriage. It just may not be good with the person that they were chosen to be married to, but after they finish that relationship, it makes them look at themselves a little bit differently. It makes them hold themselves more accountable, and a lot of them do, again, go off to get married and have children and start their own families and be happily ever after with somebody else. So take with that what you will, but I just wanted to kind of get that out the way. So this episode 7 of Married at First Sight, season 16, the couples have reached the end of their honeymoon, and they're going back home where they're all going to move in together. Now, one thing the show started doing a few seasons ago is that instead of the couples getting together and looking for an apartment together, the show sets them up in the same apartment complex, so that way they are close to each other, they can lean on each other a little bit, and just kind of have that support system right there when it comes to exploring this new role of being a married person. So they all get this fully furnished apartment in the same complex. And at the same time of moving in, they also get the chance to go to each other's former homes, former apartments, houses, or whatever, to see how their spouse lived at one point. And it's also a chance for, that spouse to gather their belongings and bring it over to the new crib. So that all happens last night. So we didn't see a lot of apartments. I think we only saw 2 residences, which I thought was kind of interesting. But we're going to start with the honeymoon first. So if you guys remember from last week, Clint said some disparaging comments to Gina. Mind you, Gina started it. I will be the first to say that. I said this last week, I think they both were at fault to an extent when it came to saying things they should not have said, saying things that easily could have been kept under wraps. And Gina's response was very childish. She was like, well, I don't think we have anything to say to each other, and I think we shouldn't talk the rest of the honeymoon, and walked away. That's a childish thing. That was really childish, really petty. So he's obviously really, I don't know if he was pissed. He seemed more, not curious, but I guess he seemed more confused about, like, I don't get it. How do we get here? So he confides in Chris and Eris. I'm not sure why he chose them specifically. Thought that was kind of interesting. I feel like, I don't know what the significance of that was, but I'm sure there was a significance. But he basically confided in Chris and Eris and was telling them the situation. He didn't tell them the whole thing. He was like, I apologized to her. And mind you, he said to her last week, I'm sorry you felt that way. That is not an apology. He didn't say, I'm sorry I made you feel that way. I'm sorry you felt that way. Basically, that's a you problem. That's not a me problem, because that wasn't my intention. That's not a real apology. So off the break, he's lying to them like, oh, I apologize to her. No, you didn't. Not really. You didn't. And what was interesting is that Eris was the one that had the mature response. Not saying Chris didn't, but Chris was more like, oh man, it's just crazy. And you're really blunt. And, like, I'm cool with it because I know you, but mind you, you don't know him either. You met him like a couple of days before the wife, but whatever. But Chris is more like, you're really blunt. So I can see how you may be off-putting to some people, saying it in a nice way. Clint is from New York. And if you know New Yorkers, not even just New Yorkers, but traditionally New Yorkers are very honest. They are very blunt. They are very, this is what it is. This is who I am. Take it or leave it. That's really kind of their mantra. And Chris is right. Some people can handle it, some people can't. But what Eris did tell him was, do you understand how the way you presented this information to her of your preferences, you prefer slender, you prefer athletic, she obviously took it as, oh, you're calling me fat, or you're saying I'm this, or you're saying I'm that, or whatever. And again, I'm not saying Gina's innocent in this whole thing, but Clint's delivery was pretty, like, off-putting. So Eris basically said to him, like, do you understand how she could see it this way? I'm not saying that what you said was wrong, but I think you also need to you also need to understand that the way she interpreted it is probably different from your intention, but that doesn't take away how she felt. That doesn't take away her interpretation of your words. So you kind of need to take stock of that, and you need to take ownership of that. And I was like, oh, look at Eris having the words of wisdom. I was kind of surprised, like, okay, all right, Eris, I agree with you. That was good advice. And so what we hear, because we don't see it, and I think it's kind of good that we didn't see it, but what we heard was that Clint went to Gina and apologized to her in private, and, just had a discussion with her, and she obviously forgave him, because that night, all the couples had their final dinner in Jamaica together, and a lot of people were concerned, and because this is how the production team tricks you, when they were showing previews of this dinner with everybody, they purposely did not show Gina and Clint, because they wanted us to assume that they weren't at the dinner, because they were still pissed at each other. But they were definitely at the dinner, so we got to see them both together. And I'm starting with them because I don't know, I feel like I kind of have some notes on them. Last night was just really dry. I don't have a lot of notes on a lot of people, I will say that. But one thing I thought was, let me see. Clint said that he admits he could have been more eloquent, and I put that everybody thinks that after the fact. When you lead by emotion, a lot of times you're going to say what you really mean, but the way you say it is not your highest priority. So a lot of times you are just going to be really mean and nasty, because we all just kind of tend to do that, unfortunately. But when they're having dinner, this is the part where I was like, see, this is why I don't like Clint. So one thing Gina kept telling him was, the comments you made were offensive to me, but they were also offensive to every woman that was there, because every woman on this experiment with us, they're all curvaceous women. So he calls himself at the group dinner standing up, and the whole point was to stand up and apologize to the women in the room. He did not apologize. He basically stood up and was saying, I did not mean to hurt anybody. That wasn't my intention. What I was trying to express was my preference of women, and it just kind of came off wrong. I was just trying to explain what I normally go for. That was the whole speech. That is not apologizing to the women who are curvy in front of you for offending them. That is not an apology in any way, shape, or form. And I liked that after he sat down, that Shaquille was the one, another man, to say, well, Gina, I want to hear from you. Like, how do you feel about the situation? I know he talked to you, but how do you feel about the situation? And she basically was like, we talked about it. He apologized. And I was trying to get him to understand that he needs to be very careful with the words that he chooses. It's like, okay, that's a nice way of saying it. And Nicole told Gina, if you're willing to forgive, then so will me and the other girls. And I like that on this show, even though everyone hasn't known each other that long, that the girls tend to really band together quickly and support each other. And the guys, to an extent, do as well. But I like that Nicole just kind of looked at all the other girls in the eye. I was like, okay, you guys agree? Okay, so since Gina forgave you, I'm going to let you know, Clint, we were not feeling you. But since Gina forgave you, we got her back. And I put in my notes that that's definitely what you need. Obviously, as women, when it comes to your friends or when it comes to your family, obviously you're going to ride or die for them, but there has to be a balance. Yes, you can be there for Gina and be her friend, but at the end of the day, you guys have also technically made a commitment to be there for her marriage. And that means supporting her decisions when it comes to that marriage. That means rallying around her and rallying around the marriage in general. Like, that's what she needs in that moment. She has her other girlfriends that can tell her, girl, you need to leave him. You need to do this. But the rest of these women signed up for the experiment, so they understand how much you want to be married. They understand how much you want to be a wife. And so they're going to rally around you and encourage you to do what you need to make the marriage work to an extent. Now, obviously, there's some situations where it's like, okay, well, girl, he's not trying. He's not willing to try. He's not listening to you. You need to give up. But initially, we support you, and we're going to do whatever we can to support you in this thing called marriage. So I did like that. And one thing I don't understand is that Gina asked all the couples, well, individually, how would you rate your marriage thus far? That conversation has come up in past seasons, but it almost never comes up this quickly. It's been 7 days. What is the point necessarily of rating the marriage? I don't think I understand the point of that. I think that it doesn't necessarily lead to something good. It just seems pointless to me. You guys can comment below if you think that this makes sense, but for me, it just makes no sense. She gave the marriage a solid 5, said that she's hopeful, and Clint gave it a 5.5. Again, I don't think it was necessary to do that this quickly. I thought that was kind of dumb, but that's just my opinion. We're going to go to Eris and Jasmine. Now, I will say that most people I've talked to about this show are not really keen on Eris. I don't know if they dislike Eris as a person, if they dislike him as a husband, or if they just dislike him for the show. Because those are 3 different things, right? The people that are chosen for the show are people that we're rooting for because they have shown that they actually want to get married. They want to fall in love. They want to have a family. They want to have that person, this experience, and they are here for good reasons. I'm not willing to say that Eris is not here for the right reasons. I feel like Eris is... I think Eris wants this to work. I think he's in the same boat as some other people where, okay, what I wanted isn't necessarily what I got, and it is a lot to take in. Let me take my time and feel my way through this. And while I understand it is a lot to take in all at once and a lot to adjust to, you also signed up for this. This show's in the 16th season, so everything that's happening has been happening for years. And if you signed up for the show, that means you're familiar enough with the show to know how things work. You know you're going straight from the wedding to the honeymoon, to moving in together, to having this person share your life with you. You know that stuff is happening. But also, I know it's one thing to have that knowledge in the back of your head, and another thing to actually see it play out and be in the midst of it. So I get that, but I think Eris needed, and I've said this before, he needed to be on a show that paired him with a girlfriend. He needed to go through that process of actually dating, maybe moving in, and then getting married. Going straight to marriage for him may not have been the best idea. I don't think he's pulling, well, think emotionally he is kind of pulling away from Jasmine. Like mentally, he understands this is my wife. He calls her my wife. He doesn't say this is my stranger. Says this is my wife. It's only been a week. I just want you to know that I'm feeling friend vibes. I'm not feeling this, blah, blah, whatever. I think I can't even tell if he genuinely likes her either at this point. I don't know if he's ever said, I like her. It's one thing to say, oh, this person is a good person. I can tell that Jasmine has a good heart, but you haven't really said that you like her. And I feel like she's probably expressed that to him. I don't know if he's really expressed that to her, though. And as a woman, she needs to hear that, especially a woman in this situation where she already has in the back of her head, oh my gosh, she's never been in love before. What if he never loves me? What if my feelings get so involved and I don't get, the feeling doesn't come back to me? I don't know what I'm going to do. I don't know if I want to get hurt. She's already overthinking everything at this point. So the least that he could do is at least put some of her mind at ease and tell her how he feels about her, which again, I don't think he's really done. So there's that part. Then they move in together and he is like, on the honeymoon, he seemed a lot more chilled, a lot more relaxed. As soon as they moved in, oh, I need the left side. Okay, I'm gonna take these 3 drawers. Okay, well, I'm doing this. Okay, we're not, no shoes on the floor. We're not doing that. We're not doing this. He was already barking out orders. And she was like, oh, my husband is bossy. He has a very particular way of doing things. She called it peculiar. I think she meant particular way of doing things. I was not concerned, but I was curious about what the significance of the left side is. He was determined to have the left side of the drawer, the left side of the closet, the left side of this. What is the significance of the left side? Is that a man thing? I'm just curious. I thought it was weird. But one thing I did like is that they had a discussion about the aesthetic of their home, what the home's going to look like when they're still on the honeymoon. They're packing up. She's like, what do you want our home to look like? He's like, I want it to be modern. I want it to be comfortable. But he said something that's so funny. He's like, if strangers walk in, I want them to know Black people live there. I was like, I know that's right, because he said he likes Black art. But I just like the way that Eris phrases things. I really enjoy hearing him talk. Even I may not like all the stuff that comes out of his mouth, he doesn't rub me the wrong way. Eris does not give me a bad feeling. I don't think he is in this position with any ill will towards Jasmine, with any bad intentions. I want to believe that he genuinely signed up for the show because he wanted to be married. But the slight concern is, did you want to be married because you actually want a wife, or did you just feel, I've done everything else and I'm 30 now, like I need to get married now? Because that's not really a good reason to get married either. And we've had some men that have come on the show with that same mentality of, well, I'm getting older and this will be my last chance. I have to get married now. That's not a reason to get married. And that's obviously not a recipe for a sustainable marriage. If the only reason you're doing it is because you're getting older and you want to have kids or whatever, like, no, dog, that's not good enough reason. Not for me. So that's pretty much all that happened with them. Nothing else really took place. He did say he feels guilty that she seems to like him more than he likes her. I don't think that's something to feel guilty about, because you can't force that. So I don't know if guilty is the right word, but I understood what he was saying, that he just kind of feels bad about it and almost feels like I shouldn't be liking her more, and she's not doing anything wrong. There's nothing wrong with her. And, fortunately next week, because as soon as they move in, Pastor Cal comes and he talks to them about like everything that happened on the honeymoon. What are the concerns right now? Let's talk about this. Let's figure this out. So I know a lot of truth is going to come out when Pastor Cal comes next week. They did visit Eris's house. He has a really nice house. It's multi-level. It was neat for the most part. It was very, very spacious. I was like, okay, he had a whole home gym in there and a man cave. And he had a framed picture of his father's obituary. He said it was a joint funeral because I think his uncle died like a couple days before or after his dad. So for us and for Jasmine, she was like, he's talked to me about his dad before, and I really like seeing this vulnerable side of him because I feel like I'm getting more in tune with his emotions, which is great. So again, I want to believe there's some hope there, but I have seen some people comment online about how they feel like Jasmine has made more physical moves to show Eris that she's in this, and to show him that she's trying to be a wife, whereas he really hasn't done anything for her, like nothing romantic, nothing whatever. And I had to think about that. I was like, what has she done? I don't think she's really done, like, it has just been 7 days and they were on the honeymoon. So it's like, okay, we're all gonna do stuff together on the honeymoon anyway. But I feel like everybody else at least had a moment of, oh, I ordered your breakfast, and oh, I ordered this for you, and oh, look at this, it's a little treat. And I don't know if Eris and Jasmine really had those moments, but honeymoon aside, the honeymoon is just fantasy. You're happy to be out of the country. You're happy to be away from work. You're just enjoying the sun, enjoying the water. You're just having fun. Now is the time when we can see a little more of that everyday interaction between the two of them, of incorporating their already hectic schedules with now, oh, now I got to think about somebody else. Now I got to, have somebody else to clean up after, or have other laundry to do, or whatever. So I think we'll see a little bit more from them and how they interact with each other now that they're living together. I won't say if I have good or bad feelings for them. I do feel that Jasmine, I think in the beginning, I felt like she was a little more into it than he was, but I think because he's not really giving her much of anything, he did tell her that I'm feeling friend vibes, and she definitely took offense to that, which I would too. And he said, well, it's not bad, we got to be friends. It's like, we do have to be friends, but it's one thing to have a friendship with someone and then that turn into romance and then we get married. It's another thing to start with marriage, but yet you're taking me back to being a friend. So I don't know what's going to happen with them. I think that Jasmine, potentially because he's not really giving her much, and because now that he's thrown this F word around a friend, I see her kind of shutting down. I think she still wants to be married. I don't know if she even likes Eris either. I haven't really heard them talk about what they have in common, what they like about each other as of yet. But I can see her potentially pulling away because he's not really giving her anything, which isn't good either, but I don't know. We'll see. And I'm sure Pastor Cal will start the road to them getting themselves together next week. So now, we're going to do Kirsten and Shaq. There was nothing with them. I literally every week feel like I have like 2 things written and that's it. They had a conversation about laundry. When they were rating their marriage, they both said it's a 7 right now. They see they have a lot in common and they like that. They still have not kissed. So there was a moment when they moved into their new apartment and they're about to go to bed. They're under the covers. She's definitely comfortable enough to cuddle with him. She had her arm wrapped around him, had her head on his chest. So she is very comfortable in his space, which is always the first step to like true intimacy, that you're even comfortable touching a person. So she seems very, very comfortable touching him, comfortable with him touching her. So that's definitely a great sign. But then he kissed on the forehead. And it wasn't until he kissed on the forehead that I realized, oh, they still haven't kissed. Because at that moment of being all cuddled up like that, that's the perfect time to tilt your head up, let your man kiss you, and then you go to sleep. That was the perfect chance. And I understand her wanting to get comfortable, but the fear is if he continues to be patient, at some point she'll be comfortable, but she seems like a traditional Southern girl where she wants the man to make the first move. And I'm just hoping that once she gets to that space of being comfortable and gets to that space of wanting further intimacy with him, that she will actually voice that and not be like one of these women who wants the man to read her mind. Because unfortunately, as women, sometimes we do that. Sometimes it is difficult for us to physically say out of our mouths, I want you to touch me. I want you to kiss me. I really want you to do this, this, and this. Some of us are like, well, no, I'm giving off hints and I just want him to know. And how could he not know? It's like men are like women. We want someone to be upfront with us. Men want the same thing. So I am hoping that once she gets to that level, whenever that is, that she will open her mouth up and talk to Shaquille. That's literally all I have for them. I didn't really have anything else. That's pretty much it. I'm going to say Dominique and McKinley for last, because I got some words about that. But Nicole and Chris, he gave the marriage an 8.2, and she said the exact same thing. The only thing they're really worried about is how things are going to be when they go back home, because neither of them have ever lived with a person before. And she has 1 dog, he has 2 dogs, so of course they're curious about, our dog's going to get along together. I don't know. I'm hoping they do, whatever. So they find out. There's this scene. Let me set it up for you. Chris is on the balcony in Jamaica while they're still on the honeymoon. He's on the balcony, head down, and he's bawling. I mean, inconsolable, fat tears. Just, oh my gosh, life is over. So, of course, in seeing that, we're all assuming, oh my gosh, somebody in his family died. Oh my gosh, how's Nicole going to handle this? Nicole comes out. She's like, baby, what's wrong? Baby, talk to me. I found out that the apartment only accepts 2 dogs. I can't get rid of one of my dogs that has separation anxiety. And I know it seems like I'm making fun. I am just a little bit. I also don't have a dog. So obviously, and I've had a dog before, so I can understand the strong emotion of I don't want to leave one of my dogs. Like, my dogs have been there with me through everything. I don't know if I would have that reaction of being so overwhelmingly emotional that I am bawling like that. I don't personally think I would do that. So it was a little off putting, like, oh, huh, okay, that's a lot. But it's also coming from someone, again, who does not have a dog. So I can only speak from my experience. I'm sure if you guys are dog people, you'll definitely let me know, like, oh, girl, I would do the same thing. And that's fine. I don't know because I haven't been there, right? I haven't been there. So I liked Nicole had the perfect response. She's listening to him talk. She didn't cut him off. She's like, okay, baby, we're going to figure this out. I don't know what the options are just now, but we're going to figure this out. And he's like, I don't want to leave a dog behind. She's like, I wouldn't allow you to. I would not allow you to leave one of your dogs behind because I definitely get it. We will figure this out. She leaves him and calls her father and was like, look, the apartment will only let us keep 2 dogs. Are you comfortable keeping my dog, Charlie, for a week or a couple weeks at a time, and then we can kind of switch? And the father's like, yeah, I got your back, whatever you need. The fact that Nicole even thought to do that is chef's kiss. She listened to her man's concerns, she took them seriously, and she made that sacrifice to be away from her own dog so that her man's 2 dogs could be there. I like that. I thought that was really sweet. But one thing I did note is that I really hope he remembers to make the same sacrifices in the future that she's making now. Because obviously he knows it's a big sacrifice for her. If he's having this reaction over his dogs just not being around him for, 8 weeks, then obviously she's going to feel the same kind of detachment from her dog not being there. So I hope he remembers that, and I hope he, keeps that in mind in the future. So I think the thing was that her dog will stay in her apartment with a family member for the duration of the experiment, but they'll do a doggy swap so all the dogs can live in the shared apartment at some point. I think that's as best of a compromise as you can give. The other compromise would have been, let's just not move into that apartment and let's stay at your house, or let's find something else. I don't know if the show would have allowed them to do that, but I would have at least explored that as an option. They had a discussion in their apartment about how he doesn't like fights or drama, and he encouraged them both, if something happens, if I annoy you or you annoy me, let's address them as soon as they come up so nothing is festering. Because again, they never lived with a person before, so they're both very on edge about how this is going to be. And she asked him, like, do you love me? And what I don't get is that he said no. She's like, good, I don't love you yet either. Then why do you keep asking? What is the point of continuing to ask this man that question if you don't feel the same way? It seems weird. I feel like it's putting a little pressure unnecessarily. So that was like my little take. Dominique and Mac. So I've said this before, and I will say it again. Dominique and Mac are very boring to watch as a couple. I don't feel any chemistry whatsoever. They're just not doing it for me. Like, not at all. I feel like Mac is taking some things not out of, like, Mac is definitely standing up for himself, which I don't think he was doing before. He was very much in past episodes apologetic whenever he could feel Dominique getting a little annoyed because he was complaining so much. Now I feel like he's speaking up a little bit about it, which I can appreciate, but she made some valid points. I'm gonna just say that. So when they rated their marriage, he gave the relationship a 7.5, and she agreed. And she made a comment to him about the fact that he complains about doing stuff, at least on the honeymoon, he's complaining. She was like, you keep saying you want to do things for me. I don't want you to do them for me. I want you to do them because you actually want to do them. And on one hand, oh, okay, I kind of get that. On the other hand, it's like, well, no, because if he's doing things for you, that's showing his commitment to spending time with you and his commitment to the marriage, right? There's nothing wrong with that being his motivation. Wanting him to want to do the same things as you is essentially you saying, I want you to be a different person from who you are. Technically, and I'm sure she does not mean it that way at all, but that's the way I think he interpreted it. And that's kind of how I interpreted it as well. It's like, it's okay for him to want to do things just for you. Like, my husband does plenty of things that are just for me that I know he doesn't like to do, and I know he doesn't want to do them. So the fact that he chooses to do it means a lot more to me and makes me like love him even more, that he's willing to make those sacrifices to make me happy, and vice versa. I'm going to sacrifice some stuff and do stuff that I don't want to do to make him happy. That's what a marriage is. It doesn't mean we have to like the same things, Because that's just ridiculous. That never happens where a couple likes every single thing. They don't have every single thing in common. They're not supposed to. You're supposed to be different people. So I understood what he was saying. And he did say it to her. He was like, I feel like, she said she wants him to be excited on his own. He said, I'm not like that. He was like, I think his concern is that I just want you to let me be me. Right? He said, the more that we're together, the more he feels criticized and like, not like he's walking on eggshells, but like he's constantly trying to make sure he doesn't do anything to annoy her or piss her off. And again, I don't think that was her intention at all, because I never, at least from the footage that we've seen, she doesn't come off as like overbearing or like you suck, you need to get it together. She doesn't come off that way, not to me, but I'm also not Mac. So that could just be the way he's interpreting her. So I love the fact that he did address it and he said something to her about it. She didn't seem taken aback. She was like, okay, that definitely was my intention. I will work on that because I don't want you to feel that way. Cool. We squashed it. That's great, right? So one thing she did say is that she hopes that things will get better when they're home and Max is in his regular routine, because he's made it clear that I'm an introvert, I'm outside of my comfort zone, and I'm in this place where I'm surrounded by all these people, and I feel like I have to be on, especially be on and on camera for the whole world to see. So she's like, maybe when he gets home, things will calm down a little bit because he'll be able to get back into his routine, be back in his comfort zone. So she's hopeful, I think. She did ask him his questions about how traditional he is when it comes to his expectations of a wife. I thought that was a great question, and I feel like every person on the show should be asking that question. Because, yes, you told the experts what you were looking for in a wife or a husband, but sometimes you don't always tell your new spouse all of those things. And it is important to have that conversation about, okay, when you envision getting married, what did you expect? How did you expect your wife to act? How did you expect your husband to communicate with you? How do you expect your wife to be when it comes to raising children or whatever it is? So I'm glad that she started to ask these questions, and I'm curious to know if the other couples have really asked it and really gone into detail with it as well. And I did say, I feel like, I don't think she has hope that they're compatible. It's just some little looks she gives. It's whenever she has a confessional, she looks really lackluster, like, yeah, so we're here. Like, she doesn't seem overly excited about the whole thing. I don't think she's feeling any chemistry with him whatsoever. It's more like, I'm here and I want to be married and yay. That's kind of it. So they went to his house. I've been saying all along this man is homeless. Homeless because he doesn't have his own place, and he is 34 years old. So this man, I guess, moved from Michigan, I guess, to California, and then moved to Tennessee. He's been in Tennessee for 5 months. This is my question, and some of you who are like diehard fans and have actually done research on the show, you can let me know. How long is this process of Married at First Sight? Not how long they're married, because we all know that they're married for 8 weeks before making a decision, but I mean the process leading up to being chosen for the show. How long is that process? I know it's not just a mere week. I know it's not even just a couple weeks. My impression is that it's at least a couple months. There's a very long, extensive questionnaire you have to fill out. You have to be chosen. You got to come in for an interview, and then they do a home visit. They do like all this stuff, right? So I imagine it takes like a little minute. So if you've only been here for 5 months, and let's say the process is less than that, you still freshly moved here. I'm assuming you have a job. That's my assumption. You do not have a place to stay. You do have a place to stay. You don't have your own place. You are staying in the basement of your friend's parents, not even your friend's house, your friend's parents' house. You're staying in their basement, and you don't even really have a whole basement. You have a room in the basement that you stay in. Now, mind you, there's nothing wrong with that. But if you move to a new state and you decide, okay, I'm going to live here for a little bit and then I'm going to get my own place, again, that's a plan. I have no issues with that. I have an issue with you signing up for this show and you don't have, because the show is temporary, right? The experiment is 8 weeks long. After that 8 weeks, if you decide to stay married, you guys are moving out of that shared apartment and now you guys are starting fresh somewhere else. You have nowhere to start fresh from or to or whatever. You don't have that. And I love that Dominique called him out on that. I really, really enjoyed it because she wasn't snotty about it. And this is the thing that got me. They went to the basement, his basement room, and looking at stuff. And she's like, she's like, I can only judge you on the things that are yours and really nothing that was his except for his clothes, because the bed was probably already there. So he didn't really have a lot of stuff. And she's just like, huh, okay. Not really saying much, but in a confessional, she was like, I think it's unsettling that he's been living in their basement. And she said it doesn't seem like he's planning to stay. I thought that was very wise. And I was like, I've been saying the same thing. And then I said the whole thing about him moving 5 months ago, which I knew it only been a few months. I just wasn't sure how long. That's not a long amount of time. And she did say that she likes men who are more established, and she's nervous because she thinks that this shows kind of a lack of initiative. Now, he said before that he has signed some leases before in the past and it didn't work out, so he didn't want to rush into it this time. Again, that's all well and good. Have a plan in place that I'll just live here for a little minute, stack my money up, and then I'll move here or I'll buy this house or whatever. But in his mind, let me live with my friend's parents for a little bit. I'm going to get on the show. I'm going to get married. And then my wife and I can pick a place for us to live in. I don't think that's the best way. Because again, from the wife's perspective, it doesn't seem like you're setting roots down. And again, you're letting the wife kind of lead things. Because he's even said to her, like, I want you to get me out of my comfort zone and I want you to push me. And she's probably like, I'm not your coach. Like, I'm your wife. And it doesn't. I can understand how that would get annoying after a while if you have to constantly be the one to push me, to motivate me, to encourage me to do these things. And I can't see how he's going to be assisting her as a husband. Like, what is he going to be helping her in? It seems like he needs all the help and he's relying on her to do it. And so they're in the car and he kept asking her, like, oh, so, what do you think? What do you think of my stuff? What do you think? Oh, no, what do you really think? He kept pushing her. She kept saying, I mean, it's fine. It's kind of what I expected. And she's going to leave it at that. She's going to leave it at that and not say anything more. He kept needling her to the point where she finally had to say something. And he was like, you know, I didn't want to jump into an apartment that I don't like. And she's like, but you jumped into marriage. Like, you jumped into this and married a stranger, but you didn't want to sign a lease. Like, do you understand how that doesn't really make sense to me, and how the marriage thing seems a lot more serious than jumping into a lease? Like, I just don't understand why you don't understand the connection between that. So he don't like this comment, right? So now he's worried, you know, now I'm worried my living situation is a big deal for her, but I told her the situation. You also kept asking her what she thought. She gave you an answer and you kept needling her. You should have left it alone, because now she told you the truth and now you're mad that she told you the truth. What do you want her to do? This is a weird situation for her, not only because this is not what she's used to, but also because, again, you're a 34-year-old man living in the basement of your friend's parents with no plans at all to move out. So then I'm thinking, did you just get married so you would have your own apartment for 8 weeks? Like, that would be probably my thought process. Whether it's true or not, it's hard not to have that thought. So I thought it was weird that McKinley got upset with her for her reaction. You brought this on yourself. You kept asking her, and Dominique has shown you that I'm not about to lie to you. I'm gonna tell you the truth, and this is what I'm seeing. So I don't have any hopes for them whatsoever. No chemistry. They're very boring. I don't see what they have in common. It's looking real dry. Nicole and Chris, I still have hope for. I think they're great. Stasha, woo, last season. Shaquille and Kirsten, I think, are actually really good. Jasmine and Aris, I'm going to hold out hope on Aris. I haven't lost hope for him. I don't think he's a bad guy. I'm hoping they'll be okay. Gina and Clint, nah. Even outside of their snafu last week, I just think that she is not ready or willing to put a relationship first. Because even outside of the comments that he made, which were, offensive, disgusting, or whatever, he still made a good point, at least to the guys, about how she's always talking about work. And I feel like I haven't really gotten to know her on a really spiritual level yet, or emotional level, or whatever he said. That's a valid concern that he still has yet to bring up to her. And it's like, dude, if that's your concern, if you're as blunt as you keep saying you are, then you need to address this with your wife. And he hasn't done that yet. So until he does that, they're just going to kind of be just playing house for the most part. I don't know. I still like the show. Still look forward to it every week. Still look forward to doing these videos every week. But last night was very dry. But let me know what you guys think in the comments. Make sure you like this video, share this video, comment, subscribe, click the notification bell, do all that stuff. And yeah, let me know which couples got on your nerves last night. Let me know if you were as bored by the couples and by the show as I was. Tell me what your true thoughts are on Aris. A lot of people are kind of not really conflicted. Most people just don't like him. So let me know what your comments are when it comes to Aris, and I'll see you guys next week. Peace.